Empower black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Power black men, shatter the stereotypes. Power black men to live extraordinary lives. Shatter the stereotypes. Shatter the stereotypes. Power black men to live extraordinary lives.
Welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where the intention is to empower black men to live extraordinary lives. This show is based on the simple idea that every black man is capable of creating inner peace, dynamic health, great relationships, and financial abundance. Therefore, we provide insights and strategies to educate, motivate, and inspire black men to reach their full potential and create the life of their dreams. So if you're ready for some high-octane motivation and inspiration that supports and empowers you to live the life you were born to live, get ready to shatter the stereotypes so you can build a life that lights you up and positively impacts the world. So now, let's shatter the stereotypes with your host, Coach Michael Taylor.
Hello and welcome to Shatter the Stereotypes, where our intention is to empower black men to live extraordinary lives. You see, there's never been a shortage of black male role models. There's only been a lack of exposure of those role models. So the intention here is to showcase and highlight black men who are doing amazing things in the world. And joining me tonight is a guy who is doing just that. His name is Kelly Marianno, and he is a coach's coach. And we're going to go a little deeper in that in just a moment. But he is committed to empowering coaches to make big bank. So we're going to talk about how he does that in a little bit. So without further ado, let's welcome Kelly to the show. Kelly, how you doing this evening, man?
Good, Coach Michael. How are you?
Fantastic. Well, glad to have you on the show. Once again, we are focusing on you and your work because you are definitely shattering the stereotypes. We all know the negative stereotypes about black men out in society. But here we get an opportunity to showcase the guys that are doing some amazing things. So again, really glad to have you on the show. So before we jump into your work, I want to start off with a few icebreaker questions. So first of all, where are you from? And tell us a little bit about growing up. What was that like for you?
I'm from Philadelphia. Kind of Philadelphia, of course, has a lot of different areas. I wasn't in a rough neighborhood. Actually, my area is considered somewhat soft. So if you were in a rough area and you told them you were from our area, that might be a problem for you. But generally speaking, we weren't in a bad neighborhood. Our family wasn't poor, but we didn't have a lot of money either. It was like probably lower middle class. We grew up in a home that my parents owned. My grandmother on my mother's side lived with us, and so we grew up in the same neighborhood, same house. I lived in that same house for the first 24 years of my life. I went away to school, but I wasn't away that long, so I kind of don't consider that much of a break. I was only away for about 5 or 6 months. I went away to DeVry Tech. It was before they became a university. I went away for electrical engineering, but I didn't know. I used to say I didn't know how to. I used to say I couldn't afford to stay, but then I realized I just didn't know how to get that done. But then either way, I didn't stay and wound up moving back to the area. In fact, I never really lived more than 40 minutes from Philadelphia at any point in my life.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your family, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Okay, so I grew up in I don't know if it's considered small or not. It was just me and my brother. Found out when I was 16 that the man that I called Dad, whose last name I carry, Marianno, because that usually throws people off, right? Like my complexion,
Italian,
not line up with Marianno. Yeah. So this Marianno is actually a Spanish Portuguese name, and it's funny when we hear someone Spanish say it, they roll the R, Marianno. So we grew up in that household, but my dad left when we were like 14. Like he didn't leave, like we never saw him again. But I mean, quite honestly, he wound up moving to his mother's house, and then, subsequently had numerous girlfriends. He had numerous girlfriends while he was, in the marriage as well. And I guess that was kind of the theme for that part of our lives, and certainly the marriage. But anyway, like I said, I found out at 16 and I had a different dad. I met my biological father at 25, which is really cool. Literally, the first one I found in the phone book. Um, for young people, a phone book is. But anyway, but it was the first John Beverly we looked up in the white pages. My previous wife got divorced, but my previous wife, we looked in the book together, and she called him first to kind of make the connection because I was a little apprehensive. I didn't know what I was going to run into.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't really understand fully what he knew or didn't know, etc. He was married. My mom was married. You know, I tell people my mother and dad were married, just not to each other. You know, so I kind of came up with an interesting background. I came up as Pentecostal background, hardcore Christian. You know, speaking in tongues, the whole bit. You know, like I should say bit. You know, makes it sound like I'm belittling it, but I'm not. But I was aware of all of that kind of stuff, like very sensitive to spiritual matters and stuff like that. We went to Christian-based camps during the summer. You know what I mean? Like we're at camp. You know, you might be a kid going to camp, learning different basketball and football skills and all that kind of stuff. I'm at camp learning how to prophesy over people. You know what I'm saying? Like that's the kind of background. And my mom was all about just raising us as well as she could. You know,
Sure.
and what's interesting is you don't realize it as a young man how much your father is needed, and that, like, you know, you want him around, but you don't know that you need him, and you don't realize what your mother. I mean, in my belief system, your mother, not belief system as Christianity, just personal belief, is that people aren't going to like this statement. They usually don't like it, but I don't believe that that's easy. It's not really practical for a woman to raise a man. Like she can raise her son as far as she can, but there's certain aspects of being a man that she just simply cannot give him. So my mother she couldn't tell me certain things about becoming a man. And unfortunately, my father didn't either. So we had to pick up some stuff. And in fact, I guess my brother is pretty easygoing, so I don't think he'd be embarrassed by this. But he said there were things that he had to learn about physical intimacy, I'll put it that way, right? He had to ask people around him that were married. He had to ask guys that were around him, how does this work? How does that work? Because our father never told us. When he just literally just told me that over the last 2 months. When he said that, I'm like, oh my God, that's great. That's unbelievable when you think about it. But then the irony is my oldest daughter is 31. And it's funny, right? 31 down to 4 months. But I was the one that had to talk with her, and her mother didn't have to talk with her. And I was like, what is this? Like, how does that even happen? And I kept practically begging both my ex-wife and her biological mother. I was like, you guys need to be talking to her about these things, but they didn't. So fortunately, my daughter and I were very close. I mean, we were close to the point where, you know how like some girls, when they have their first cycle, they're kind of embarrassed about it. My daughter couldn't wait to tell me. Like when I got home, she was like, Dad, guess what? And it was like, how could she possibly get ready to tell me? And then when she said what it was, I'm like, okay, I can't connect her excitement to what she's saying to me. But I was glad that she felt close enough to me to say it.
Absolutely.
But it's also interesting that it's something I can't really walk her through. Like I can say, hey, I can help you. I can take you to the store and buy these things, but I don't know that process. I don't know what it does to you. Emotionally, stuff like that.
That speaks volumes to you as a father, though. The fact that she was comfortable enough even bringing it up to you with that excitement. See, that speaks to you as a father, which I really commend you on that.
Yeah, and that's what I really appreciate about how close we were as a father-daughter group. It's funny because she looks a lot like me. So that when she was young, they would call her Kelly with a ponytail. You know what I mean? Like, I guess they could say Kelly with hair at all at this point. But you know, that's kind of how. So we not only looked alike, we think alike. In fact, my daughter, she helped me in a lot of ways. You don't realize how much your kids are playing a role in raising you to a degree, also, right? Because like she helped me to understand my thought processes weren't crazy. Like I can't relate to how my brother thinks, my mother, or my dad. I mean, the dad I grew up with. I couldn't relate to them and how they think. And when I would bring stuff up, they're kind of looking at me like I came from the moon. I was like, what is going on? Like, what's wrong with? like I really thought something was wrong with me and how I thought. I was like, man, I should keep stuff to myself because no one understands what I'm talking about. But when I met my daughter, again, she's like me, so I could see that. And I was like, okay, somebody can relate to me. And then when I met my biological father, I was like, oh my God, here it is. Now I get it. Now I understand why I'm like I am, because he and I are a lot alike. I mean, we're not the same. I don't know if you're in the same or whatever, but we're not identical, but with just so much similarity in how we think. I was like, now I get it. Now I felt like I was more at ease with who I was as a person, even as a man, when it came along.
All right, so if you were trapped on an island and could only take one book with you, what book would you take?
I'd have to say the Bible, quite honestly, because even in a lot of stuff that I've read, when I was thinking Go Rich, Rich Dad Poor Dad, whatever, all these many amazing books, I find that a lot of the truths that you find in there, you can also find in the Bible. I think we just don't always know that those principles come from there or could be found in there, but I find that very often they can be. So I think that's the one that I would have to take with me.
Now, do you like movies?
Yes, I don't watch a lot of movies though.
What's the first movie to come to mind when I ask you what's your favorite movie?
Oh, Pursuit of Happiness.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah.
You know, when that movie came out, my son calls me up. My son was probably 18, 19 when he saw it.
Mm-hmm.
He calls me up. He said, Dad, that's your story. That's your story. I said, yeah, I could relate. So go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were about to say something.
Oh, just that I used to watch that movie every year just as an encouragement that, again, it's a movie, but just to watch someone go through such challenging times, but just keep pressing forward. I was like, sometimes when I watch it, and again, I know it's a movie, but it's still like when you think about human drama and the things that people are able to get through and get through successfully is amazing. We can go through a lot in our lives and still come out shining on the other side. And, that's one of the things I really appreciated about that movie is that you can still get up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, there are some people who are pessimistic about the future in general, while others are actually pretty optimistic about the future. So where do you fall on the spectrum between optimism and pessimism for the future in general? Where does Kelly fall?
This is really interesting because there's a bit of conflict there, but I'm more on the optimistic side. I really find it difficult to sit down and worry a lot about stuff. Like, so even when COVID started breaking out and people are like really getting the beginning stages of people getting panicky about being around other human beings, I was like, really? Like 2 days ago, you were around them and you were fine. Now all of a sudden you've freaked out. And I told people, I said, listen, I'm not, without common sense. So if you tell me you got COVID, I'm not going to go roll around on your bed, right? Or your furniture, or grab your jacket, whatever it is to get in contact with. I'm not doing that. I said, but by the same token, I refuse to run around scared to live my life as well. So I was like, no. And I can always look down the road and say, no, we can come out of this. This is what we look forward to. Even though we've only been married a little over a year, some of the times when my wife and I had different struggles, what we do is we're still talking about the things that we look forward to having in our lives and doing and stuff like that, because we believe that we're supposed to touch lives like that. So I don't really have a lot of time to be pessimistic. I think it's counterproductive in most cases.
Cool. Well, my friends gave me a nickname, and my friends call me Michael Happy Ass Taylor. Because I consider myself to be an irrepressible optimist. I am that's just the lens through which I see the world. I don't deny the challenges that are out there,
Mm-hmm.
but I hold firm to the belief that I am 100% responsible for my life turning out the way that I want it to. Okay. And with that belief system, then that allows me to take full responsibility for everything that shows up, but it also tells me that I can create whatever my heart desires, and I really believe that.
Mm-hmm.
So, With that being said, now I'd like you to introduce Kelly the professional. So tell the audience about what you do professionally.
What I do now, or do you want me to go back to the
What,
archive?
what you do now.
Okay, so as a business coach, I operate as a business coach. So I help coaches and consultants to reach the 5-figure per month range, really as quickly as I can. But the ultimate goal is not so much just the 5 figures per month, but to be able to create consistency in the income of the entrepreneur. One of the things that I found when I started coaching, actually I wasn't even well, I was coaching, but I didn't know I was coaching. I'm gonna put it that way. I started doing like group coaching back in 2009. And one of the things I found is no matter what a person's dream business was, the idea of getting clients, if they weren't immediately around them, or immediately in the sphere of influence, they had no idea how that was going to happen, how to position themselves or anything like that. So I started learning those types of things so that I could help people become viable in their businesses so they can get to their dream. Because if you came to me and said, hey, Kelly, this is my dream, let's say you're doing 6 figures and you want to do 7, then I want to help you get there if I can, right? Like I'm going to see how we can work through what you're doing. Let me find out what you're doing now and find out how we can accelerate that or speed that up so that you can get to where you want to be or whatever the changes are, because I want to see you get to whatever your thing is. Like culturally, we had this challenge where with the crab mentality, right? Where there's always this competition, and it's really sad. Years ago, when I was married before, we kind of had what people consider kind of a big house. It's like 4,000 square feet, but people would make a big deal out of it when they would come in the house. So anyway, so when I met this couple, my ex-wife was working with his wife, and so we're sitting down talking. They're talking business, and he starts talking to me. But he's kind of bragging to me about his house and his car. Oh, I drive a 750 IL, and I bought this. We had this house built, and I didn't say anything about me, but I knew where his development was, and we specifically didn't build there because the houses were too close together. So I knew his situation. He just didn't know mine. But I didn't feel I'm not there to compete with you. I don't. Listen, I'll celebrate you all day long. I don't need the accolades. But then, about a week or so later, they had to come to our house, and he puts his 750 in my driveway. He won't even come in the house. He literally sits in the car for an hour waiting for his wife. And I was like, really, dude? Now, I was like, I'm not into the, the competition thing.
Yeah.
Our cultures, instead of us just doing the best that we can. So anyway, so that's my thing, is I want to help people reach the level of not only getting a far more than average income, but I want them to have the stability and then the ability to create generational impact, which is why I called the company Impact initially, is because I wanted people to think generational impact. The Bible says that a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children. I said, typically, we're trying to figure out who's going to pay for the funeral, right? So I said, we had that dynamic, and then we had this other thing that's available to us. Well, why not get that? Why not go to that level where, people I was like, no one had to fight over either one of my dads, when they died, nobody had to fight over anything they had because they didn't have anything. I mean, my dad, biological, had a little bit of cash, but basically he didn't have anything. So it's like, we don't have that, but we need to. We need to be able to pass something down to our kids besides bills or memories.
Absolutely.
I mean, I feel that's what we need.
Now, before you were a coach, you were a technical support analyst. So tell us a little bit about what that was. What did that mean? What did you do?
So I was going to tell a joke, but what it is essentially, I'm the guy who, if you have a problem with your computer at work, maybe not you, but like a typical corporate situation, you would call the help desk. They triage your problem, to a degree. And then whatever they can't fix, well, at one point I was that level. I was the level that was receiving the calls, but then I moved up, and then eventually I'm not taking calls anymore. It's just the stuff that they can't fix makes its way up to me, and I find a solution for the problem that they're experiencing, or that's the goal.
Now, was that hardware related or software related?
Both.
Both.
We did both. I mean, I've done it, I've done it for a software development company where I was beyond third level support. I was I was the last person in support before it went completely to the programmers. Like I was working with the programmers and the client to try to simulate their environment so that the developer could find the bug in the system and then program around it or fix it.
And where'd you learn that?
Wow. 100 years ago, I went to a school in Philly called Computer Learning Center. And I started learning, well, I was more learning programming, but they did teach us a little bit about PCs. Like this is in the late 80s. So it wasn't like today where PCs, like, of course there's PCs everywhere, but it wasn't the same back then. In fact, I remember one of the classes I was in, they had to keep explaining to this woman how to turn her computer on. I mean, literally just the power button. Like she couldn't remember. So it was like, it was that complex for people in the beginning, but I had a computer at home. I was probably, I didn't even know any other black kids, period, that around me that owned a computer. But my mom bought me, you remember Atari?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Atari made desktop computers also. A lot of people don't know, they just know their video games, but they made desktops also. So I had a couple of different desktop models and I taught myself programming when I was like 12. So I was just kind of a geeky kid in that regard. I was fascinated by the fact that I could type stuff out and this computer would go do stuff that I told it to do. It was actually kind of cool. I would go in the mall and I could type just a few lines and have my name going back and forth across the screen. People were like, oh my God, this kid just did it, whatever. And I would just walk off, But yeah, so I learned pieces in different classes, but most of it came because someone gave me an opportunity. Matter of fact, I thought I knew a lot. And I went to an interview and the guy said, yeah, he started asking me questions. I didn't even know what he was talking about. I didn't know the answer. I didn't even know the context of what he was getting at. But he said, you don't really have exactly what I'm looking for. He said, but I want to give you a shot. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. And then I just absorbed as much as I could because I realized I needed to understand stuff as quickly as possible. So, and it was easy for me. Like I could follow maybe it's because I understood programming to some degree, but it was easy for me to follow. And back then, Microsoft had a big competitor, Lotus. I don't know if you remember Lotus 1-2-3 and Lotus Notes. Well, Lotus was a little more intuitive than Microsoft was. Microsoft got better over the years, but before, Microsoft Word and Excel, if you went through their menus like File, Edit, whatever, all that was completely different from Word to Excel to PowerPoint. None of them were similar. And you're like, why would you do that? Whereas Lotus was the same. So if it was file such and such, file settings, whatever, they're all in the same place in any of their programs, and it made it easy to learn. Theirs wasn't. So I was like, so it gave a different challenge to learning Microsoft stuff. But I knew Microsoft was bigger, so I just picked it up, and I've learned stuff from using it as well, or other people asking me to help them.
Fascinating. Well, I'm like yourself, somewhat of a technology geek. I remember building my first computer and that kind of stuff. So just fascinating stuff. So
it is
to have those kindred connections there. I want to shift gears just a little bit. And my most recent book is titled The Cure for Onlyness: A Black Man's Guide to Joy, Passion, and Purpose. And the book addresses the feeling of onlyness that we as Black men sometimes experience when we are in environments without any other people of color. So I know you've had that experience. So I'm curious, how did you deal with that? Or was it an issue?
You know what? What's kind of funny? A lot of times, it didn't always come out as a direct issue. Sometimes even racism is sometimes they dance around it. Like for example, my best friend, we've been best friends since 9th grade, but he went away to school with me, and we had gotten a job, and this wasn't technical. This was just a security position. I shouldn't say just, but it was a security position, and they were looking to hire a sergeant. Somebody. It would have been a promotion for me, and they didn't give the position to me. They gave it to a white guy, and I asked about it. They said, well, I think this is something about like I came in late a couple times or something, which was legit. So I was like, all right, that's fine. I said, but why is my friend not getting the position? He's been with the company longer and he's never late. Well, he came in a couple times with the wrong socks. Really?
Oh
I
my.
was like, come on. And the guy that they gave the position to, I was real cool with the guy. So I didn't have a problem with the guy. But I'm like, not only does he come in with wrong socks, he's supposed to have a tie on. Most of the time he didn't. I mean, he's like slumped over in the chair. I was like, are you kidding me? And I was like, clearly, this is, we know what this is. But I was like, it's annoying that people don't want to say, I mean, not to expect them to just come out and say it, but,
Right.
reality is. But anyway, but in technology, the funny thing in technology is there's not much color. More now, and it's not always black color now. It's, we got a different color. But there wasn't much color, and then certainly not many women, in it. I didn't really find it that difficult, but I don't know how many opportunities I may have missed because of my color. But not many people brought that out as an issue. I don't know why that is. I don't know if I was just effective enough that they left me alone, or I don't know. I really don't know what it is, but I didn't experience a lot of that where it was, like kind of coming at me. But there is some where you're out there by yourself, because like one time I was working for a hospital in Delaware and some computers got stolen. So they brought in some what they call constables. I didn't even know what that was. Because I'm from Philly, like either you're a cop or you're not. So this is constable stuff, it's foolishness. So, they had, they were supposedly interviewing everybody that had access to the storage room. So I was talking to one of the other guys who happened to be white that I know, and I, was talking to him about this interview that this constable was doing with me. I was like, yeah, he's claiming they got digital fiber optic cameras in the ceiling and all this kind of stuff, which I was like, which is ridiculous. In that setting, it just didn't make any sense for what he was saying. I was like, you could just lock the door better than, before you start spending money on that kind of stuff back then. So anyway, I told him what he was saying to me and all that, and he laughed. And I said, what's wrong? I said, didn't he ask you the same thing? He said, no. I said, what did he ask you about? He said, just you and this other guy that was also black. So the constable he was interrogating the blacks, but asking the whites about the blacks when they have the same access. I was like, really? So I don't know. It wasn't like always in my face. And maybe it's the optimistic side, because like even some of the things I dealt with in my life, I just never related my color to being inferior or behind someone, even though I know, until they see my face, they don't know what to do with me, because my name, Kelly Marianno, they don't know.
Yeah.
Because they didn't know if they were looking for a man or a woman. And then they definitely weren't looking for this. They weren't looking for this face when I show up. I've been places where I'm the only one dressed in the lobby with a, little briefcase or something. And they still don't want to look at me because they're like, it can't be him. It just can't be.
Right.
So I think the name probably opened doors to a degree. And, unfortunately, definitely, well, anyway. So yeah, I don't feel like I felt it as much as I would have thought that I would have over that period of time. But it seems like it pops up at the most inconvenient times when it's time for promotion, it's time for special projects. Like I would watch people get special projects. I'm like, how is that even possible that they would give it to that person? Like, first of all, they're not even talented or skilled. Like they might be like way behind, and you're like, I don't understand. And like, yeah, it's more that foolish. But there's really nothing you could, at that level, I didn't feel like there was anything you could do about it. So I wasn't going to make, I could ruffle feathers, I could make a big deal out of it, but at the end of the day, their decision is their decision.
Got it. So you're a business coach. So for the people who are watching this, who may have no idea what a business coach does, obviously people like yourself and myself, we're coaches, and, we have different skill sets, I'm sure. But for someone who's watching this, they go, well, what the hell's a coach? What do you mean by you're a coach? So kind of break it down for the viewers who maybe have had no experience with coaching, don't know the profession itself. So just talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So one of the things I tell people, especially when I'm working with a coach, is not to lead with the title coach, because if you had a bad experience with a coach and then you come along and you say, hey, I'm a coach, they're going to try to relate that to that bad experience because they don't know what else to do with it. Just like if they had a bad experience with a black professional, now they don't want to deal with other black professionals because of what one guy did. So I tell people to talk about the result that they bring, but the idea behind coaching is to help walk alongside in my case, the business owner to get to a particular end result. Now the end result is something that ideally the person I'm working with already is aware that they want. Sometimes people try to create end results that the person doesn't really want, or they use language that's not consistent with what the folks are really looking for. But the idea is to walk alongside them to get them the results. So for me, like what I talked about with helping them get to 5 figures, the idea is to first give them a certain knowledge set, like here's this understanding of this component, and then they'll get some kind of homework to implement to tie their business into that new understanding that they have. What is an ideal, my target audience? What does that look like? Like a lot of people, they think of the demographics of a person they're working with, but not psychographics and stuff like that. So when we really get into who it is they're trying to serve, what the top of mind problem is. So we got to walk people through it. And I guess it's kind of like coaching, because to me, you're walking alongside them to make sure that they're going where they need to go. And also, one of the biggest keys is that we provide accountability for where they say they want to go. Because first of all, I think it's funny because, I've had people say to me, well, these are people that knew me personally, but they said, oh man, like you come hard. Like you're like, I was like really direct with them. And I was like, no, I said, first of all, I'm holding you accountable to something you said you wanted. You know what I mean? I said, this is not about me. This is not about Kelly. Kelly's out of that equation. This is you. You said you wanted to get here. You wanted to do this by this time frame. So I'm just reminding you along the way. Now, you might get tired of hearing about it, but the reality is it's what you said you wanted. So that's what, and that's the thing I think that very often people need, probably more than even in some cases, some of the direction they may even know to do, they're just not doing it. Like, oh yeah, I need to go do this. Well, you've been saying that for 6 months, but they still haven't done it. Well, there's all kinds of limiting beliefs that we have that will keep us from doing what we need to do. And as a coach, you got to try to walk them through that even. And kind of even in the beginning, you're coaching them even through the decision to hire a coach. And I tell people, you want to get a person to a buying decision, even if it means no to you. No, I don't want to work with Kelly. I want to work with Michael. Okay, well, go work with them. That's cool. But at least you made a decision to move. What challenges me is the indecision, where people want to stop and just, I'm not sure what I want to do. Well, you got to get off the fence eventually. So to me, a coach is just someone that's walking with you to help you get to the end result that you want. Just like when athletes hire coaches in specific areas, they're helping them to get better and sharper in these particular areas of their lives, or whatever it is they do, like a boxer or a martial artist even. There's certain areas that they might want to get better in, and they're helping them with those particular areas. But like for us, the coaching is in a specific area of their lives. It's not defined to a specific skill set, but a specific result.
So for those of you who are watching and you're going, I don't know about this coaching, let me just break down a couple of things in terms of coaching for the audience. So coaching isn't therapy. Okay, so let's get clear. Coaching isn't therapy. So if you're dealing with depression, or you're dealing with any of those, shall I say, mental health issues, that's not necessarily what coaches do. Although there are some coaches that may specifically deal with those types of issues. Generally speaking, coaching is really about dealing with the present moment and the future. Therapy is about unpacking the past and healing whatever traumas or whatever you may be dealing with. So there's two different things. So again, coaching is an opportunity to partner with someone who is going to support and challenge you to keep your commitments. The coach's job isn't to do the work for you. The coach's job, as Kelly just mentioned, is to hold you accountable once given some direction to help you get where you want to go.
Yep.
So it's important to understand the power that comes from coaching. And I don't want to say it's a new industry because it's been around a while, but the last 5-6 years or so, it's really exploded. So it's really important that if you're thinking about a coach, I just want to make a couple of recommendations. Recommendation number one, if you're thinking about hiring a coach, number one, first of all, decide what type of coach you're looking for. Get real clear on what do you need support or help with. That's the first thing. Secondly, once you're there, then as you're researching your coaches and do your due diligence, don't just jump on the first one that comes up. If you're doing a Google search or whatever, that's why LinkedIn and places like this are so important, because you can really do a lot of research and find a wide variety of coaches. So, but the one thing you want to do is make sure that you get testimonials of some sort from someone that coach has worked with. A referral, if you will. Now, there are some coaches who have tons of certifications, and they're very good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And there are others who have no certifications who are actually very good at what they do. So how do you know the difference? You got to go to the referrals. You got to talk to the people that they've coached to give you the indication of whether or not it's someone you might want to work with. Because I believe certifications are important, but not mandatory when you're looking for a great coach. I believe in results over credentials.
Oh, me too.
If you're looking for a coach and you find a coach that's creating powerful results with their clients, that's the one you want. Not necessarily the guy that's got all these diplomas on the wall and these certifications, because that piece of paper may not serve you well. So just think about those two things if you're considering hiring a coach. Number one, figure out what type of coach you're looking for, because again, there's financial coaches, there's health coaches, there are relationship coaches. I mean, there's no limit to coaches. So you've got to get clear on what you're looking for. Secondly, do your due diligence. Ask for some sort of referral or recommendations from someone that coach may have worked with in the past. Now, they can't obviously give you confidential information, but they can say, I've worked with this guy, and then I can suggest, or maybe they'll put you in contact with the person, because if he's a good coach and he's done a great job, he's going to want to let you talk to people he's helped, because he knows it's going to bring in more business. So make sure you're doing your homework. So with that being said, Kelly, I want to just touch base on this point. There is a stereotype that Black men don't want to invest in coaches. There's a stereotype that Black men don't read. We've all heard these stereotypes, right? So from your perspective, what do you say to that Black guy out there who's watching these two brothers on the screen right now talking about coaching? Maybe they're on the fence. Maybe they're going, maybe I want to try this coaching. What words of advice would you give that person?
As someone looking to get a coach?
Yeah, somebody's watching us right now and they're going, man, I'm thinking about getting a coach, but I don't know a lot about it, but I'm interested because of what these guys are saying. So in other words, I want you to pitch your services as a business coach. So the person, let's say he's starting a company and he's looking for a coach. What are you going to do to enroll him in your services? Or what are you going to say?
Well, first of all, what you wind up, I share with them how I find how I'm able to get them results. I'll kind of give them a high level overview of how I'm able to get them results. Sometimes depends on when they ask as to whether or not I'll talk about someone that I've gotten, really good results for or something like that. It's funny, everybody doesn't ask that, but I would tell them to key in on that, on the results, on the fact that I can get him to where he wants to be. And the other thing is, there is a relatability component that's in our, that should be in our favor, right? As Black man to Black man, there should be a component where we're like, man, it'd be good to work with another brother because he understands some of the mind, you know, landmines that I'm trying to avoid in this arena, or things that I may run into, especially once people see. So I would like to work with people that we feel like we have a lot in common with and we can connect. Sort of like we connected when we first, started talking. You go, okay, that's pretty good dude. He's a good dude, whatever, and build from there and move forward. Um, I haven't. The funny thing is, I haven't really worked with many black men, and maybe that's part of that equation. I never really thought about that because I found that women have responded more to my coaching than men for whatever reason. And now, right now, because of the way I'm working my process, I'm getting a lot more calls from white people than I am from blacks. I think culturally, I think there's a disconnect in terms of what we think about when we think about investing in our business. And I think we need to realize investing in our business should not be seen as an optional event. It should be seen as necessary. And in fact, I've told other coaches or would-be coaches, a friend of mine in particular, she was like, she talks about the fact that coaches will charge a lot of money. And she said, some of the stuff you can get for yourself online for free, some of the knowledge. I said, yeah, but how long does it take you to do that? What are you costing yourself by waiting to put the pieces together on YouTube? She was like, what do you mean? I said, listen, for example, I said, let's say you're making $5,000 a month in your business and I can get you to 20. Let's say there's some ultimate number that you can get to, and that number happens to be 20. Like for whatever reason, you got a rev limiter on your income and it stops at 20 grand. I said, so there's a 15 grand difference. I said, so if it takes you 2 months longer to get there, it just cost you $30,000. I was like, it didn't come out of your pocket, but it kind of did come out of your pocket, right? She's like, oh my God, I never thought about that. I said, exactly. We don't think about what it costs to go slower. We just think about what it costs to get help. And we don't understand the investment is well worth the money. I think one of the challenges is culturally, we have a problem with the concept of investing. Like, because even when I used to work for Primerica, yeah. So when I used to do that, I found that people of color looked at stock market investing the same way they do the casinos. They talk about them the same way. I'm like, this is not like rolling a dice and seeing, let's roll the dice on Apple. I was like, that's not what that is. I said, you're actually buying an asset. I mean, and I said, you're buying an asset. I said, it's not this, wow. So then I realized I had to talk when I was doing that type of coaching, if you will. I had to talk to people differently. I had to go back and scoop them up. Like I had to get them on the same page. Like, let's talk about basic investing and what this really is and move them forward. Even you're familiar with the game Cash Flow 101? Mm-mm. Robert, it's Rich Dad Poor Dad is a game that goes along with it called Cash Flow 101. We just played that recently with my wife's sister and husband, and their concept, like I had to explain to them. So you buy a stock, and then if you sell it for higher, you get the like the basic. We just don't know. We're just not in their arenas getting this knowledge. So where white people seem to hire coaches and they don't seem to care what it costs, 10, 20, 30 grand, 50 grand. You got Tony Robbins, he had $1 million clients. I mean, I know he's Tony Robbins, but the point is, they get it. People get it enough that they'll write him $1 million check. You have to have an understanding of benefit. Like, they're not doing that arbitrarily. Like, oh, Tony's my friend, let me give him $1 million. No, they're finding value in what he's bringing. The fact that he can bring that much value to a human that they would write $1 million check should be an indication that you should take a closer look at coaching. But you got to do the due diligence, like you said, because you could easily hire, and that becomes a problem too. They hire a coach that doesn't do anything for them. Now I got to overcome that. Like even this week, I was talking to somebody and they were saying, oh, well, how are you going to be different from anybody else? I've spent all this money on coaching, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm looking at their profile on LinkedIn and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, she may have spent the money, but I don't know. And I don't know what they taught her, but there was no reflection of, I would not have thought she had a coach, let me put it that way. By looking at her profile and her website, it didn't look like there was any guidance being given there. It looked like she was on her own.
Yeah, and there's two pieces to that I want to touch bases on. Number one, you talked about your clients being white. Probably 70% of my books and services that I provide are purchased by white people.
Mm-hmm.
I took it upon myself to create a movement, if you will, a platform specifically to change the mindset of Black men, because as you mentioned, culturally,
Mm-hmm.
I think we're just now gaining the understanding of the importance of investing in our inner potential.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know how difficult it is, especially for Black men, to come into a space of personal growth and development. There's just so few of us out there that we're really hesitant. But see, I'm the optimist that I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm a huge fan of Anthony Robbins. I have an opportunity to meet the guy, sign autographs and all that kind of stuff. But when I started doing Anthony Robbins work back in the 90s, you know, walking on hot coals and doing all that kind of stuff, 98% of the time that I was in these seminars, and I was the only Black guy there.
Yeah, I'm sure you were.
I was the only Black guy there, right?
Yeah, especially with that.
But then I said, you know what? There's an opportunity there.
There is. Mm-hmm.
Because I know I'm not the only Black guy that wants to do this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So how can I package myself to, I don't want to be a Black Tony Robbins, but I want to be a Coach Michael Taylor that's doing what Robbins does, which is inspire and motivate people.
Exactly.
And so I've been writing and speaking since 1995. And it's still tough. It's getting easier now, but it's still a tough sell to get Black men to engage in their personal growth and development. And a lot of it obviously is cultural, because we've been conditioned to believe that if we just pray about it, it'll fix it. I don't think it really works that way. We've got to make the investment in ourselves first. So that's why I do what I do, to expose Black men to people like yourself, to transform the mindset of Black men, because that's where it all begins, in the mindset. So with that being said, boy, time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, it is.
I want to talk a little bit real quickly about your process. So you help coaches attract these customers. So do you do this through like building funnels or doing webinars, or how? Just give me a little background on how you do you.
Yes, it's basically a combination of things. Once we get their message to market right, because usually that's the first thing that's broken, or quite honestly shattered, but they don't know it, of course. Once you get that message right, some of it I'll lean a little bit into their preference, because some people are more open to a certain level of engagement. Like some people want it to be almost all automated, right? They want their kind of, Russ Ruffino, you know what I mean? So like his method is they purely do like the webinar. Like we hit a webinar, boom. And one of my coaches does the same thing. He goes down that road towards the webinars and drives people that way. So I do like to do webinars, because I feel like anytime we can do this, and I can see your face and I'm hearing from you, I get a feel for whether I'm going to know, like, and trust you. This is the quickest way to get it done. I can do that faster and better, more effectively this way than I can anything I can put on a piece of paper and present as copy to. So I love the public speaking angle. I love getting people out there that way. That's why my profile it talks about using presentations that pay, because I want people to think about using your voice, like even one-on-one opportunities. You can use those to create leverage into, doing business. So anyway, so I like the webinars because it allows you to get a little deeper and a little closer to the person and give the examples you need to give them, as well as the testimonies. You can kind of you could address a lot of the objections when you first do when they first see your video. Because anyway, so so I like doing it that way. And then of course through LinkedIn, which is, we hit LinkedIn pretty hard, which is how you and I wound up meeting. But LinkedIn is really priceless, because there's so many people and it's so easy. We talk a lot about building lists of your own folks. But the reality is, when you know who you're looking for, it doesn't have to be your list. I can shop in your list. Like if I had access to your list, or like I'm speaking at an event that you're holding, if you have the right people there, or business owners or other coaches or what have you, then it's the same thing. Like we appreciate that, but we don't always realize like LinkedIn is doing some of that for us and saying, hey, here's these people in the Philadelphia area within 50 miles. They do exactly what you want them to be doing, and I can go right after them. So I definitely do heavy on the LinkedIn side, the LinkedIn profile, let that do a lot of work for you. And then the webinars is my second component. But I do believe you need to have something that's nurturing them along the way, along the buyer's journey. So I feel like you got to capture that information and use it to help them to make a buying decision.
So with that being said, as we wind down, once again, I'm an optimist, and I personally see infinite opportunities for anybody out there who's willing to put forth the effort to make it happen today, because technology opens the door for, I'm sitting here in my little home office having an interview with you, which can be broadcast around the globe, literally around the globe, and it costs me $14 a month. Now, you got to stop and think about this for a minute. 20 years ago, for something like this to happen, it would have literally been millions of dollars to be able to be global. But now I can do it for $14 a month with a webcam and Zoom. See, that blows me away. But I want to close with this question for you. Obviously, everybody's not going to be techie like we are. Still no excuse for you not to capitalize on your knowledge. See, because that's the key. Knowledge is key right now, because you can package your knowledge and monetize it, and you can make big bank, big bucks. So for that guy out there who's thinking, man, I'd really like to be online, I'd really like to be on this digital thing. You talked a little bit about getting their messaging right. So where does that person who, let's just say they've got a great idea, let's say maybe they're a former teacher and they're really wanting to get into the digital space, in just a short Cliff Note version, where should they start before they go online to start selling themselves? What's a great place to start? Would you say branding would be the first place to start?
Not necessarily. I don't necessarily look down that road first, because sometimes you can get in front of people before you've even established your brand. Just like you and I could have a conversation, you don't know anything about what's behind me, any entity or anything like that. So I think the first thing to do is, if they recognize, usually that's the first one, they don't recognize that they have a saleable knowledge set. But if they realize that, they should figure out, what does that look like? Like, oh, I know how to do this. They should write that out. Like, just even in baby steps, just top level, high level. Hey, I'm gonna buy a computer. I'm gonna buy a domain on GoDaddy. I'm gonna go do this. Like, just hit those high levels and don't make it too heavy. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. We look at the big pictures. It's so big. It's like, no, we're not worried about that. Like, yeah, you're gonna build a house, but today we're just pouring a foundation. So we're not gonna talk about the roof. We're not gonna talk about electricity. We're not talking about plumbing. You should pour the foundation. And that's the thing. I think they need to get that skill set out of their head and just identify, and then maybe even talk to a few people like, hey, would you be interested in this? Because I was actually listening to Russell, the other one, Brunson. He was talking, they're doing a challenge. They got a challenge going right now. Anyway, they got a 3-day challenge, and he was saying, like, he would tell people like, hey, you can put this out there. And he said he started doing it for other people. He said he said people would come to him like, oh, can you help me get this on? Or he would just go to them, hey, that's pretty interesting. I can make a course out of that. And they're like, how do you do that? He would just do it with them and split the proceeds from them. So I think there's a lot of things like, this is like we talk about, like we're a half step behind, the rest of the world in essence. But anyway, but that's what I would tell them, to get that knowledge out of them, first of all, and then see who's looking for that information. Because you can Google and see who else is looking for, or go to Google. There's a tool that Google has. What is it, AdWords or something? Anyway, one of the tools, allows you to see what kind of terms people are searching for. And you can do that and see what the interest level is in the thing that you have an idea for. You see a lot of people searching for it, that's an indication that you may have a winner on your hand. And the reality is, it doesn't even need to be a home run.
Yeah.
It could be a base hit. It could be a bunt. What difference does it make? You do it one time and you get paid for the next 20 years for it. So, the reality is that we need to be taking more shots than sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. So now I'd like to give you an opportunity. How can people find you if they're interested in your services?
So one of the things we talked about earlier, or you had messaged me about the website, because it's just not a primary tool for how I get clients. But you can find me on LinkedIn. Just look up Kelly Marianno, Marianno. Probably definitely the only Kelly Marianno you'll find with that name spelling. I think in the country. Or you can email me directly at kelly@rapidclientattractionsystem.com, or you could call me directly at 856-266-1551. One of those three options, even though they say you shouldn't give too many options, because then people got to make another decision. So they got a decision to call you, and then the decision for how to reach out to you. But anyway, there's a couple of ways to get to me.
And so there will be a link below this video on the podcast, so it'll go directly to your LinkedIn page, and they can find you that way also.
Oh, that's
so now I want to give you the opportunity. Any closing thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
Wow. I think I'll kind of lean back into what we talked about in terms of optimism and things of that nature. I think no matter where you find yourself right now, just realize that there is an exit route. There's the ability to get beyond where you are. There's somebody that's been where you are, or even in a worse place, and has gotten beyond where they are. So don't spend a lot of time sitting there focusing on what didn't go right over the last whatever number of months or even years, or whatever you've been through in your life. I don't know what that is, but the reality is, one client called me and she said, I think it's too late in my life for me to be trying something. So I told her, I said, you're still breathing, so there's still time. So if there's something in your heart to do, something God has placed, maybe don't believe in God, but God placed on your heart to do, then you should be doing it. If that thing won't go away, you can't put that thought down, then go out and do it. Just give it a shot. You have nothing to lose, but the whole world to gain. And we have something to gain from it as well.
Okay, I just want to say thank you, man, for hanging out with us for an hour and sharing your wisdom. Once again, you are shattering the stereotypes. It's been my honor and pleasure to have you on the show. And I look forward to seeing some amazing things that you're going to be doing in the future. So again, thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me.
So this has been another episode of Shatter the Stereotypes, and that's my message to you. Shatter the stereotypes. There is absolutely nothing you cannot do, be, or have as a human being. It's your responsibility to figure out what it is you want and be willing to do whatever it takes to get it. Take care. We'll see you next episode.